I was just an ordinary office worker, dreaming of finding true love, until one day, I met Ryan. He was handsome, charming, and seemed to have it all. He pursued me relentlessly, with flowers and grand gestures, and soon, I fell for him. Our relationship was like a dream. He took me to fancy restaurants, bought me expensive gifts, and introduced me to his wealthy friends. I felt like Cinderella, but lately, something felt off. He started becoming more controlling, criticizing my clothes, my friends, and even my job. He kept pushing me to quit, saying he could take care of me. I felt uneasy, like I was losing myself. One Friday, he insisted on taking me to a high-end restaurant to meet his parents. I was nervous, but also a little excited. I thought this was a big step for us. When his parents arrived, they were polite but distant. The conversation was strained, mostly centered around their business and social circles. I felt like an outsider. Then, Ryan's mother looked at me and asked what my parents did for a living. I told her honestly that my father was a construction worker and my mother was a cleaner. Her smile froze. She exchanged a look with her husband, a look I couldn't quite decipher, but it made me feel small. Ryan quickly changed the subject, but the damage was done. The atmosphere turned cold. After his parents left, Ryan turned to me, his face grim. "Mia, why did you have to say that? You could have just said they were retired or something vague." I was stunned. Why would I lie? "Ryan, I'm not ashamed of my parents. They worked hard to give me a good life." He sighed in frustration. "You don't get it, do you? My family has a certain image to maintain. We can't be associated with people like that. People like that." My heart sank. Was he ashamed of me? Of my family? The man I thought I loved was looking at me with disdain. The next day, Ryan acted like nothing happened. He called and said he was taking me to a big party at his friend's mansion. He told me to wear the new designer dress he'd bought me. I hesitated, the sting of his words still fresh, but he was so insistent, promising it would be a fun night to make up for the awkward dinner. Against my better judgment, I agreed. When I arrived, the party was in full swing. The place was dripping with wealth, champagne flowing, people in glittering outfits, and conversations about yachts and stock portfolios. I felt like a fish out of water. Ryan grabbed a glass of champagne, pulling me towards a group of his friends. He introduced me, not as his girlfriend, but just as Mia. He immediately launched into a story about his latest business deal, completely ignoring me. His friends laughed and toasted him, and I just stood there, holding my clutch, feeling invisible. One of his friends, a guy named Chad, looked me up and down with a smirk. "So, Mia," he slurred, "Ryan tells us you're from the other side of the tracks. Must be quite a change for you, hanging out with the big boys." My face burned with humiliation. I looked at Ryan, expecting him to defend me, to say something, anything. But he just chuckled and clapped Chad on the back. "She's learning," Ryan said, as if I were a pet he was training. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I calmly took a deep breath. I looked at Ryan, at his smug friends, at this whole fake, glittering world he was so proud of. And I knew I didn't belong here. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because I was too good for this. I wanted a love that was real, not one based on status or bank accounts. So I took the expensive bracelet he had given me off my wrist and placed it on the table. "You're right, Ryan," I said, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the chatter. "I am learning. I'm learning that I deserve better than this." I turned to Chad, and for the record, the other side of the tracks taught me about loyalty and respect, things you clearly know nothing about. The entire group fell silent, their jaws practically on the floor. Ryan's face went from shock to fury. "Mia, what do you think you're doing?" he hissed, grabbing my arm. I pulled my arm away. "I'm leaving," I said simply. "We're done, Ryan." I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just stated a fact. I walked away, head held high, leaving him standing there amidst the stunned silence of his wealthy friends. As I walked out of that mansion and into the cool night air, I didn't feel sad or heartbroken. I felt free. I felt like myself again. I didn't need a Prince Charming to save me. I needed to save myself from one. The walk to the main road was long, but with every step, I felt lighter. I called a cab, and as I rode home, I thought about my parents. I thought about their hard work, their love, their integrity. They had raised me to be proud of who I am, and I had almost let a man like Ryan take that away from me. When I got home, I took off the designer dress and put on my favorite comfy pajamas. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, and for the first time in a long time, I recognized the person staring back. The next day, Ryan blew up my phone with calls and texts, alternating between angry threats and desperate apologies. I blocked his number without a second thought. A few weeks later, I was at my favorite local coffee shop, sketching in my notebook, when I heard a familiar voice. It was one of Ryan's friends from the party, the only one who had looked uncomfortable during that whole scene. His name was Alex. He apologized for his friend's behavior and for not speaking up that night. He said he was impressed by how I handled myself. We started talking, and I discovered he was different from the rest of Ryan's crowd. He was down to earth, funny, and genuinely interested in my life and my art. He wasn't trying to change me. He liked me for who I was. We started seeing each other, taking things slow. We went for walks in the park, visited art galleries, and had long conversations over coffee. It wasn't about fancy dinners or expensive gifts. It was about connection. He met my parents and loved them, admiring their work ethic and warmth. He fit into my world perfectly, and I felt comfortable in his. It turned out that true love wasn't a fairy tale with a wealthy prince. It was finding someone who sees you, respects you, and loves every part of you, especially the parts that make you who you are. Standing up for myself that night was the best decision I ever made. It led me away from a life that wasn't mine and toward a love that was real and true. Remember to always value yourself, because the right person will value you too. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to follow for more stories.